What's up, guys? Welcome to the motherfucking Jungle Boys. In this video, we're going to be going over a full loot guide for Fertilizer and all of the best locations to find it in all of the maps. So just before we get into it, I know it's been a while since I posted, and it's been a long time. All right, boys, and I've seen all the comments, I've seen all the video suggestions that you guys want. I've been seeing it, I've been taking action on it, and within the next few videos on the channel, you know, I hope you guys aren't disappointed. These loot guide videos take a really long time. I put together all of the possible information that I feel is needed for the loot guides, and it takes, honestly, it takes up to 500 hours per video. I'm just saying it, like, I got to find the information first and then I have to edit it. It takes a very long time, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, you know, on top of life stuff. This is the reason why the videos take so long, but it's a lot of work over on my end. But like I said, I've been seeing your guys' comments and hope you guys aren't disappointed, because these videos, man, they have a lot of information in them, and I'm happy to share this with you. So let's get right into it, boys. So going straight into this video, I took a different approach to the legend that is different than my past loot guide videos. In my past videos, I pretty much just covered the hotspots as the main locations, but in this video, I pretty much go over all of the possible spawn locations for Fertilizer, as well as an entire different system to the hotspots that we'll be going over in a few minutes. So it is quite a big jump as comparison to the last videos, but anyways, let's get into explaining the legend. All right, so first we have the leaf icon. This indicates 1 to 2 fertilizer bag locations. So this only indicates there being up to 2 fertilizer bags per each location. Another thing to keep in mind is these are 99% of all of the possible fertilizer spawn locations. There's a possibility I missed some, but since these are pretty much all of the possible spawn locations, that means that not every single one that you go to, you'll get a spawn in each match that you play. So you could go to your first or even second location within one match that you're playing, and there could not be any fertilizer that spawns there. But say the next match that you go to those same locations, they might be there. So it's really just all hit or miss with the Vigor loot. But the point of this entire map that you're seeing right now with all these icons, every single one of these icons is pretty much all of the fertilizer spawns that are programmed within Vigor's game code that I've found. There may be a few more, but within my research and experience, each of these spawns are the ones that you're most likely to get. All of the other ones that I've seen, they came like 10 matches after the first one that I played. So there's no point to even mark it because the chance of getting it is so low. So with all those extra details covered, the leaf icon indicates there only being a possibility of 1 or up to 2 bags of fertilizer spawns. Going into the second aspect of the legend, the hotspots. So with hotspots, the reason why they're changed to a different system in this video is because we're going in higher variants of loot. In past videos, metal parts being a common, fertilizer is uncommon, and in higher variants, the hotspots can kind of be hit or miss to the point where you don't know what is a hotspot because it changes so much. So I figured I create a whole aspect to a legend to just break it down and make it easier for you guys. So we have high expectancy hotspots. These are ones that for the most part, 90% of the time, have at least 3 fertilizer bags. And then you have low expectancy hotspots, which is a potential hotspot. These are just areas that have a lower chance of being a hotspot. So normally within these locations, they'll spawn up to 2, but in some matches you'll see 3 there, but not every time. Just before we get into the map breakdowns, we need to go over extraction goal. So when you're grinding fertilizer, your overall extraction goal on average should be 30, because if you want to get up to that 1,000 as fast as possible, you want to lower your rate with going for higher extraction numbers because it increases your chances of surviving. But at the same time, within some matches that you play, you gotta go for those high risk games too. And for those high risk games, you gotta just lock in and say, all right, I'm gonna try to max out this match. But The slower way of doing it, just getting 30 per match, you would be surprised on how much you can actually get in a day while focusing on grinding. And you could get up to that 1,000 faster than you think. So going into the maps, the first 4 maps that we go into are the best maps for Fertilizer in order. And then every other map is just completely randomized with how good it is. So here we have Eikevjen. As you can see here, your best bet every match is to pretty much just go to the hotspots. And this hotspot right here is pretty much the best one that you could go to. And you might be thinking, what about the bigger hotspot? Does that make it better? No, it doesn't. All that the size means is the proximity. It has nothing to do with which one is better or worse. So if you go to the smaller one right here, you should find the back of a truck with at least 3 bags of fertilizer within 90% of the matches that you go in. Sometimes it can even spawn 5 around that area. And that's another thing about hotspots. It's at least 3. There are some hotspots within these maps that can spawn up to 5 and possibly even more. But up to 5 is rare, but it has possibility of happening. So let's just say you go to this hotspot and you don't really find that much fertilizer. That's another thing with the high possibility hotspots. It's not a guaranteed every time. It's just most likely. So say you go to this hotspot, you don't find any, just go to the next one and there should be fertilizer there. So going into bridges, a very big hotspot within all the maps is a field or like a crop area where a farm is at. These are ultra hot spots as being shown on screen right now. If you go to these types of locations, these are the best places to find fertilizer and vigor. Other great locations is just pretty much on the outskirts of the maps. So wrapping up bridges, one of the best places to actually spawn is at the south part of the map. Even if you're spawning somewhere else, if you run around here or really just on the outskirts, because that's where most people aren't focused on going, 9 times out of 10, if you go to those places, even by the end of the match, there could be fertilizer there because most likely someone didn't run through it. Going into Sagbruk, you have the fishermen's and you have this field area. For the fishermen's, you're gonna pretty much be taking this exact route. You're basically gonna be hugging the water, but on the decks, and then you go inside the town. So you're basically, it's kind of the same as my past video with the chemical route. Fertilizer is somewhat in the exact same locations as the chemicals. So you're pretty much just gonna do like a hook around the fishermen. The field area where the fertilizer spawns is up by the road. There's a tractor and there should be a couple bags of fertilizer. And then you go into the field, you walk into the field on a path that leads to a shed type thing. Along that whole trail, you should get some fertilizer there too. So going into more locations, these 2 locations, one being by the main sawmill water area down by the dig spot and under the train tracks on the complete other side of the map. These are great areas for fertilizer, but also keep in mind that on Sagbruk, fertilizer and chemicals, they have the same spawn areas for the most part. So they could either coincide together or it will be one or the other. So if you go to these locations and you find chemicals and that's it, you know why. But for the most part, these are great places for fertilizer. They will usually be inside of blue plastic containers or around them. These, I almost labeled them as hotspots, but there wasn't enough information to even make it a low expectancy, but they are still great locations to find fertilizer. All right, going into Kjerstin, which I call it KJ, going into KJ, you have the hotspot that is on the farm up here. This is honestly, boys, you go to this location, I would honestly say that it is the best spawn rate of fertilizer in Vigor. You go to this location, looting the entire circle range, you'll probably most likely find a lot of fertilizer. Going into the low expectancy hotspot, the percentage of spawning a hotspot is kind of a mid-range, but I just figured I'd mark it as low expectancy. But this is pretty much a high expectancy hotspot. Another, like I said, the outskirts. Going to the outskirts over here, the little houses, those are great. Another great spot is right here to the right of the yellow circle. There's kind of like this hut there. It has a bunch of loot. You'll probably find maybe 1 fertilizer bag, depending on, you know, if in that match the program spawn location spawns fertilizer. But other than that, you can find glass, chemicals, nails there and everything. With all the maps that I just went through, being Eikevjen, Bridges, Sagbruk, and Kjerstin, these are just what I've labeled to be the top level fertilizer maps, and that doesn't mean that the rest of the maps are useless. It's just the way that I decided to sort the video out. But anyways, let's get into the rest of them. So going into Valley, as you can see, there's no high expectancy hotspots, and that's another thing with high expectancy hotspots. They don't spawn in every single map. So if you guys are confused on why the legend is still showing the high expectancy being an option, it's only for the sake of the legend. But there are some maps that the possibility of them spawning is just too low to have them marked. But I just figured you guys should know that there are some maps that just don't have them. So as for Valley, besides going to the low expectancy hotspots, your best bet is pretty much sticking to the top half of the map. This is where you'll have the most likelihood that you'll find some fertilizer. And I would even say for the most part, the low expectancy hotspots on Valley are not really worth going to. They should just be looked at as something that you end up going to on your way out of an encounter or something like that, because the percentage is extremely low to find, even 2 at times. So the low expectancy hotspots are just extremely hit or miss on this map. Your best bet is just sticking to the top half of the map. Going into Batterie, this is for both snow battery and regular battery. So as I was doing this map, as you can see, the main village industrial part of the map down here, I was almost questioning if there's fertilizer there. And I swear in past times I've played, like past updates even, or just going off memory, I almost could just swear to myself that I've found fertilizer there. And given that I went to this location 30 times and found every single time I went, I found 0. So given that, I'm not marking on the map. So that's why there's nothing marked there. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. So moving on, we got the low expectancy hotspot near the exit. That's a great place to find fertilizer. It's usually in the back of the house under like the shelving area, and then on the front aspect of the house on the deck. Like I said, all the other spawns are pretty much just hit or miss. It's like I don't even want to label it as, oh, here's another great area that fertilizer could spawn, because you could go there and literally not find any. It's all just based off hit or miss. But like I said, these are all the program loot areas. So, you know, just for the chance of you finding it, this is a great location here by this triangle shaped house. And then by the houses on the water over here, this is a great location too. Another great location that is pretty much guaranteed most of the time is under these lean-to areas that is on this area of the map right here. You go here 99% of the time, you'll find at least one bag. Going into Felly, you have the hotspot right here. This hotspot, it's like the little village area, and then there's this field and these little shed lean-tos that you go to. This entire area is pretty much the best place to go to find fertilizer. The other hotspot is a very great place to go to as well. You go to the little house area and also kind of follow the trail here a little bit, and you should find fertilizer bags there as well. As for the pinpoint locations, the best places to find fertilizer are in the meadow areas that are near water, and just kind of following this trail aspect here, you're most likely gonna find fertilizer. Going into Fiske, I'm just gonna say this map looks awkward, and maybe some of the Vigor experts out here are looking at this and just thinking to themselves, there's no way this guy did this right. And that's exactly what I thought. I probably played this map 30 times and went to every single location. This is what I could find. It was just on the outskirts by the water. That's the only places I could find. I went every other place in the mountain range. And I'm not saying that there's not fertilizer there. I'm just saying it is a extremely low possibility that you will find it. Though it is awkward that pretty much all the spawn locations are on the water's edge. You know, it works, boys. It works. It is what it is, boys. It is what it is. So going in the hotspots here, the little triple house thing we got going on here on the houses, this is just insane. You go on the dock area and you go in between the houses, you'll find a whole crap load. Another great area within this range here, you usually have to like jump in the water, cross, and then go to the little shed area. This is a great area as well. Going into the low expectancy hotspot, it's such a blatant area that's in your face. If you decide to go to this location, make sure you get there pretty fast, because the fertilizer, you know, it's just out in the open. It's just getting ready to be taken, so you got to get there fast to get it. Another great location is by the big barn over here. 90% of the time it usually spawns 2 bags. Another great is on the complete opposite side of the map. It's on the road, and there's like these fertilizer bags within this wooden crate area by all these cars. Yeah, that's a great spawn location as well. Dverg, you have down by the main house. It's pretty much all around the house, as well as right out front. There's a tree and a tractor, usually where fertilizer spawns at. Every other location, a great place to find fertilizer is on trails or near water. So going here, you have the water spawns, and in the trail area, and over here by this deer feeder. There's a deer feeder there. Deer feeders are another location where there are mainly fertilizer or nails. Going into Anikken, you have the main village. You just scout this whole village area in this hook shaped manner. You kind of just run it within that. You're probably gonna find a lot. Other than that, you know, mainly just probably sticking around houses, you'll find fertilizer. Going into last map is Myren, the low expectancy hotspot here, top of the map. It's a great aspect for fertilizer, but it's low expectancy, so you could go there sometimes, find 0 to 1 fertilizer bags, but there are times that I've found 3, and it's you kind of have to look around the entire village area. You know, the first house, it's usually between all the houses, and then you gotta go down in this area right here behind this house on the porch. All the other spots, great spawns, are kind of before this village over here. And other than that, just kind of sticking to the outskirts. So going into the next aspect of the video is a full breakdown of all the other ways to find fertilizer. As for lootable items, we have 4 different types of white shelves. 2 short ones, 1 long one, and 1 tall one. Now, like I said earlier, chemicals and fertilizer kind of go hand in hand with their spawn areas, in this case in the short and long shelves, and I think also in the tall shelf. I'm kind of just going off memory here for the tall shelf, but for every other shelf, as of right now, there is no other resources other than chemicals or fertilizer that comes out of these shelves. And keep in mind that these are always subject to change with game changes. Like we've seen in the past, fertilizer used to be in toilets. That was back in 2021, and since then I've probably gone into 1,000 bathrooms and not seen any. So to my knowledge, that's no longer in the game. But as for the white shelves, it may end up being an RIP moment, but as of right now, white shelves are a great place to find fertilizer. The other ways to get fertilizer is seasonal challenges, daily challenges, and the crates that you get fertilizer from are uncommon crates. Uncommon crates are your best bet, and resource crates, but keep in mind for resource crates, it's less of a chance to get a single variant because it gives you a drawing of all the resource variants. Your best bet is just uncommon crates, and if we want to talk about possibility, maybe there's a possibility it can spawn in other crates, but it's pretty much unreasonable for you to be grinding other crates for fertilizer. Going into the next breakdown, these are the high risk loot locations and how much fertilizer spawns in each of them. So we have the time safe, the board house, the locked container, and the buried cache. So the time safe spawns 10 or more depending on if boosted. The board house spawns 15 or more depending on if boosted, and the locked container spawns 20 or more depending on if boosted. And as for the buried cache, it spawns 7 or more depending on if boosted. So for the time safe, board house, and locked container, there's different loot cycles that differ each match, and there's not one single selection that's set in stone every single time, but for the most part there'll be fertilizer there. like more than 50% of the time there'll be fertilizer. So each high value loot location has up to 3 different types of loot it will cycle from. For time safe, the option cycle is either fertilizer and nails, glass and nails, or glass and fertilizer. The board house has either fertilizer and glass, fertilizer and chemicals, or glass and chemicals. And the locked container has either fertilizer and nails, glass and nails, or glass and fertilizer. So basically, to break down what that means is you could go into a match and go loot for, say, the locked container, and for that single match that you go in, given that the option cycle is either fertilizer and glass, fertilizer and nails, or glass and nails, within that match that you go in, you might only see glass and nails, but the next match you go into, 9 times out of 10, you'll see a fertilizer selection, because the cycle is a 2 out of 3 chance of getting fertilizer. Now, the whole 2 out of 3 chance thing might not be entirely accurate, because of there is a possibility that the order that the cycle goes in is completely randomized and could unfortunately have you getting the same selections as you did the last match. But even given that, it's programmed to change eventually. But not to get too caught up in the possibility of whatever, I know for a somewhat fact that there are 3 different cycles. And just saying, regardless of possibility, the past 3-4 years I've been playing, 99% of the time I've found fertilizer. So to cut the confusion, the only reason I bring up possibility is because I'm not entirely sure about Vigor's code. So about the cycle order, I could be right, I could be wrong, but at the end of the day, I know for the most part, there's 3 different types of selection cycles that are within the high-risk loot locations. And with that being said, you're going to be able to find fertilizer within these locations, no problem. So with all of the key information out the way, we need to talk about a strategy. And what should the strategy be to get the most fertilizer in the shortest amount of time? So within grinding, your mentality should just be focused on fertilizer. So with the extraction goal in mind that we talked about earlier, being 30 fertilizer per encounter, it takes what, less than 10 minutes to get 30 fertilizer? So the best way to go about this with strategy per every encounter is to at least take out 1 portable signal so you know where people are, 1 adrenaline shot so you can get to locations faster, and also carry a caffeine so you can maximize the time of using the adrenaline shot with full stamina. So with all that in mind, and just sticking to the method of going in and leaving with the goal of 30 per match, you'll end up having a few hundred fertilizer before you know it. It's really just about treating it as a grind. And within treating it as a grind, it's actually possible to make more than 1,000 fertilizer a day. So that's pretty much the video, but there is one last thing that I'd like to go over, and that is for future Vigor maps that are not in these guides like you see. Eikevjen wasn't in the middle part video, and whatever next map is coming, or next maps in the next few years when you guys may be watching this, isn't marked in this video obviously. So here are all places that most likely have fertilizer in future upcoming maps. So it's basically just a highlight of this entire video. You got farmlands or crop areas, white shelves, the map outskirts, houses on water, and just near houses in general, near deer feeders, and under small lean-to roofs like the ones that you see in Sagbruk or bridges. Can find fertilizer under those. You can also find it in trails near points of interest, or points of interest in outskirted areas, and points of interest near water. And lastly, just as I went over before, fertilizer is most commonly around chemicals. So overall, just keep all these in mind in future maps. And if you go to all these locations, most likely you will find fertilizer there. So there's one more thing that I'd like to say, just as a disclaimer. All information in this video has a possibility of changing. And you know, within game development, it's normal for bug fixes, game changes, and even more drastic game changes. But with Vigor, it can be completely different. It could be game breaking or too drastic of game changes. You know, we've seen it in my past videos of the build free crowns video and the weapon plans video. These are more drastic game changes that I feel are more more so on the side of game breaking. Not exactly game breaking, but pretty almost to that level. And I just figured I'd make a disclaimer to say, you know, there's a possibility that information in this video could change. Now, within game changes or whatever, that's only one part of the disclaimer, boys. I'm not trying to throw shade at Vigor, but there's no denying, boys, there's no denying that the way that they run this game is a complete catastrophe when it comes to bug fixes and figuring out glitches and fixing problems. So because that whole aspect is unpredictable, so many bugs have happened in Vigor's history to where nothing is impossible. And that might be looked at as too dramatic and, oh, you're like conspiracy, whatever. No, boys, let's just think about it here for a second. There's bugs that are still in the game that have been here since the beginning, and the devs don't know how to fix those. That could mean that we log into Vigor one day and this bug explodes. No one knows how it got there, and the devs don't know how it got there. And that bug could have to do with the loot, and it could be game breaking. And it's just like, bro, that's what I'm saying. And the possibility of that happening is so low, but there could have been a bug that's happened that they log on and they don't know how it got there. So that could happen for any other aspect of the game. So I just had to have this disclaimer here, boys, because it's fully unpredictable. We don't know what could happen. And I'm not saying all this video will change. I'm just saying maybe some parts of this video will change, just with like regular game changes and stuff. But for all the more drastic things, overall, we don't know, because with Vigor, it's fully unpredictable. So with all that being said, boys, if you enjoyed this video and it helped you, hit the sub button. And, you know, I know these videos take a while, but just know, boys, like, you know, I'm really working on them and I'm really trying to make them worth it. So I'm trying to be better with the time frame of how much I post and everything, but it's all a process. But anyway, for all the people who need people to play with, if you play PlayStation, send me a friend request at CrazyGorillaX and I'll add you into a community that has players that play every day. You can also follow me on Instagram at CrazyGorillaX. But yeah, guys, that's a video. You know, I love you guys, man. I thank you guys for supporting and, you know, all the support that you guys give. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.